IVM.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 110 of Shunya 1.
Hey, welcome. What's happening, Amit?
It's been a while, Shobhit, since we've been doing this here.
Yes.
We need to get more regular, man. People are going to start killing us.
Yes, I know. My 2020 resolution is
more of these?
To do more podcasts again.
I think, we should do more of these. We should also kind of start thinking a little bit more of the out-of-town things that we've been talking about, right? So
I do too many trips to Bangalore and Delhi and don't do podcasts there.
I know, so we should figure that out. But, we got a great episode to kind of bring us back.
Yes, we do. I'm talking to Shobhit Singhal.
Yeah.
Who's a good friend of mine from Hotstar and also has a very interesting journey in his own career, which he's been doing. So we're going to jump in, talk to him and talk about all things, I think, from everything from why it's important to debate to why is everyone in the country doing content?
Yes. Yeah, no, I think that we got some really interesting conversation going on that piece, right? So I think that people will really enjoy that piece. They'll have to stick around till the end of the episode to hear that, but I think they'll like that part.
Absolutely. Let's get on with the show. Hey Shobhit, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for doing this. Welcome to our small little studio on this nice Saturday afternoon. And from your usually busy week, how's it going?
I don't know what you're talking about with busy weeks. I've been chilling. Jan 2020 is here. December just got over. It's kind of spilled over. It's nice.
You guys are doing nothing at Hotstar, right? Nothing interesting happening. No work going on whatsoever.
Yeah, you have nothing big coming up in the next few months.
Do you guys ever wait for my boss to not hear about this podcast at all? That would help. And then, we can get into this.
Okay.
Awesome. But welcome to the show. And thanks so much for, taking the time. We want to hear about some interesting things happening at your end, of course. But just to give a little background on your, little bit of your personal story, I think you had a very interesting, unorthodox sort of startup life early on in your career. Why don't you tell us about that, or even going back to your IIT college days?
Sure, man. Firstly, thanks for the warm welcome, Sheila Amit. It's great being here. This is a first of its kind for me, especially with the studio setup. I like that a lot. We can chat about it. There was nothing particularly surprising about my startup journey. All of them failed spectacularly. But
you learned.
Which is precisely what every postmortem document says right at the end.
Have you learned enough? Yes.
But if anything else, it's been super interesting. And what it's done is, what I like to tell people when I talk about this is that, I just recently exited my first startup. That's my 20s. I exited my first startup learning a lot, as you just said, Sheila, but with zero bank balance. I'm at an age where most of my peers are buying houses or thinking about it, buying cars and, hey, getting married for all I know. And this is the point at which I'm thinking about, cool, where do I want to start from?
Yes.
It is scary and empowering at the same time. It makes you introspect a lot into what are the things that you really value, what are the things that you really care about. Because when you're not being driven by the people around you, by the circumstances around you, there's an even greater onus on you to make that decision and to make something that's worthwhile for yourself. So it was a very good time in my life. Turned 30, got my first job, landed up at Hotstar. Hotstar's been like this crazy rocket ship journey. We'll get into it in detail later. But I think if I were to think about my 20s, like the one word is high risk appetite roller coaster, right? Like those are the terms that I'd pick to describe my 20s. I think it was right from IIT Bombay days. Didn't feel too enchanted with the standard path, or at least what I perceived as the standard path back then. Got into debate while I was towards the end of my college years. Liked it enough, and we did well enough to try and start up in that space where I was teaching schools and colleges. We had this debate curriculum in place. Oh, wow. And it was great to teach 9th graders to go back home and annoy their parents by asking why questions. So that was fun.
I didn't know this even existed back then.
Well, can you talk a bit more about it? Like, what was it? How did it work? What was it?
So, parliamentary debate it's a set of competitions where people go speak for and against the motion. The whole idea with debate and its appeal to me was that I've always felt that as a responsible citizen, you ought to be able to appreciate both sides of an argument or an issue. And it's only when you appreciate both sides can you make a truly informed decision or have a truly informed opinion. And this is super important. When I went abroad for the Asian Championships, for the World Championships, so we actually did exceedingly well in India. We kind of ranked in the top 10 in Asia as well. So we went for the World Championship, and that kind of increased the level of exposure that we had to other people who felt this way. And one big difference that I saw back then, this was 10 years ago, was that school kids, right, in their 8th, 9th, and 10th grades were being trained in the art of debate, reasoning, logic, argumentation.
Wow.
Whereas if you were to compare that with India for a second, most of us were being taught to do what our parents told us to do, or not question our elders. I think it is seen as disrespectful in our culture. But there's a thin line between being disrespectful versus being aware, honest, asking the right questions in the right way, and then forming your own well thought out opinions. I think that really resonated with me. So that's something I wanted to do. Led to a bunch of interesting experiences.
This is pre-Twitter, by the way, right? Which is where everyone debates today.
Yeah, but you see, I always feel that online debate is super low threshold, right?
Yeah.
There's no cost to typing a bunch of junk characters, misspelled, maybe with words that you wouldn't use in real life. There's no real cost to it. But out there in the real world, the people that you're having these discussions with are your colleagues at work, are your family, right? These are people that you deeply care about, and you deeply care about your opinion getting through to them.
Right.
It's a very different environment from Twitter, where there's no cost or consequence, right? And that's when appreciating the other person's viewpoint becomes even more important. So the internet world has essentially encouraged echo chambers, whereas the real world, especially if you want to be good at it or be good at maintaining your relationships with people, requires you to empathize.
Right.
I think that's been a key difference. So that was interesting. Did that.
What was the startup about which you actually launched after all of these sort of international competitions and success you had with what you're doing?
It was super simple. We saw that I thought that I had this corpus of knowledge, of information, and I'd learned about this one thing, which I could go to. There was KV school in Powai, there was NMIMS, right? There were a bunch of schools in Powai as well. Just go to them, and it's almost like an extracurricular class where you try and set this up, have an every Saturday thing. Some of them had an every Thursday thing. It was a 6-month curriculum, right? Parents would enroll their kids, regretted 6 months later. Same old story. I think I remember one parent basically having this abortion debate. And that was an interesting time where the parent wasn't too happy that I was telling their kids about or asking them to... what I was accused of was telling kids that abortion is a good thing. Whereas...
Pro-choice and all.
Yeah. Whereas what I came back to them with was that I'm not telling your kids that abortion is good. I'm telling your kids that they should have an informed discussion about abortion. Right? And you should value this, because if you don't, then the probability of them making a bad decision in the future is way higher than if they're aware and educated about it. And sure, we can have a judgment call on when's the right age, what's the right time, but a 10th grader, man, seriously, you think they don't know already?
Yeah, exactly.
So that was an interesting time.
Wow. So you were quite controversial from early days.
I was the peacemaker, Sheila. I always had the words to induce peace. But
on a slightly more practical this, right? I mean, like when you're talking about this kind of thing, getting curriculums into schools or extracurricular activities into schools, how did that, how was your experience doing that? I've known some people who have been trying to do some stuff in that space, and it has been hard. I mean, like I know 2 companies that folded trying to do that.
Yeah. No, it's hard. It's not an easy journey for sure. I think the biggest thing that builds momentum is that you actually want to get the ecosystem on your side. So if you want to get schools on your side, the schools must get a tangible benefit out of it. That tangible benefit usually is prestige, right? So if there's a competition that has national level accreditation or that has some international platform, right, which and schools could actually take pride on the fact that some of their students did really well at a national level or at an international level, that becomes a good incentive structure. So, and it's easy to think about, no? I'm sure you guys have heard of the Olympiad kind of exams, the Maths Olympiad, Science Olympiad, etc. Now, there's no real incentive for schools to encourage students to do it. It's not that the school's going to get like 3 toppers in the board exam or something out of it. But the reason they do it is because it's an established platform.
Yeah, so it's a recognition.
Yeah, it's a recognition, right? And I think that is something which applies to sports, right? The reason sports do well is because we've created a system where we have district level, state level, national level, right? So there's an incentive for schools to keep supporting that. The Don Bosco, known for its football and basketball, right? Various different things. And the same applies to the literary arts as well. So quizzing, for example, in the school circuit is big, right? Especially now. And Born Vita Quiz Contest, I remember, was the pioneer in trying to do that, right? Derek O'Brien did his best over there. And so that's been an interesting phase. But it needs an entire ecosystem. I don't think it's something that one person can single-handedly change, right? I mean, it was easy for me getting out of college. It was one of those didn't have much to lose decisions, right? I'm the quintessential 5-pointer from IIT Bombay. But I think it made me really, really happy to be doing that for the year and a half that I did. And yeah, I mean, I thought that this was it. This is pretty damn cool. Like if I lived the rest of my life this way, it'll be amazing.
Right.
And it's interesting because going back to college, I remember living on, and this isn't like, I'm not comparing with anything, but I remember thinking that, dude, $5,000 a month is a lot of freaking money. Right? And it was, right, back then. So I think that you have this change in perspective, you learn more. Obviously, what I was trying to do was difficult to scale. Maybe that's what you're talking about, companies folding. And that was actually a very good segue for me to get into this startup where I was like the first senior guy in after the founders, which was digital education. Which seemed like, in my head, it seemed like this beautiful logical extension of what I was trying to do.
Transition.
I'm like, wait, I can't educate single-handedly. The only way to scale this is digital education. So let's do this. Did that for 3 years. We scaled from a 12-people company to an 85-people company in 1 year. So that was insane. We were building content for Pearson's, McGraw-Hill's, Scholastics of the world, the big 4 publishers. That was fabulous experience in terms of, despite coming from an institute of technology, my first year experience with technology came right here, which I guess is another standard thing for a lot of people. They don't really study tech while they're doing it, but the job kind of teaches you. That was pretty cool. Had a lot of fun with that. And yeah, then just wanted to try my hand at different things, man. Got interested in education again. I remember that there was a year where I had semesters planned for myself with courses from Coursera, right?
Wow, really?
I used to assign credits to these courses based on how many weeks they were. And I'd make it a point to do 12 credits every 6 months. And that was a super interesting phase in my life because I thought that I was learning again.
You adopted that whole self-learning
I mean,
thing.
Exactly, right? Because if you don't keep learning, then you're always going to keep missing out. I remember doing courses on gamification, courses on social network analysis, courses on designing questionnaires for social surveys. There were like basic stuff like machine learning, etc., like stuff which obviously I value today because I did it back then. But all of that kind of opened a new world of opportunity, which in retrospect only existed in my head, but it still did open that world. And yeah, so I got into building a social app. We had a strong team of, we hustled together, a bunch of IIT Delhi chap, another co-founder that we had on our design team. And we were building the social messaging app for a while, plugged in a bunch of offline relevant features like group location sharing way before WhatsApp and Messenger had these features in them.
I wished for that forever before WhatsApp had that.
So we had this back in 2015, 2016, right? And WhatsApp and Messenger, they came out with this in 2017 or maybe a bit later. So it was a lot of fun. We built great tech. We loved the products that we were building. Users didn't think so. And so we never managed to scale like beyond the 5 digits, right? And so that was an interesting time because we realized that what we've built is kind of valuable in the sense that the tech is great. So we started strip mining parts of our technology, plugged a solution for the supply chain industry, sold it to this warehouse for just-in-time deliveries, used our entire location stack to make the supply chain faster and more efficient. We plugged our messaging stack out, built it into this product that was connecting teachers and students, facilitating online education. That was a great product. It's still live in the market today. I think these guys, last I heard, they were raising around. So we did a bunch of these things, kind of made some kind of a return in terms of time spent. All the friends we took loans from, the one investor we managed to convince to give some money to us. So we kind of like cleared all those accounts out, returned money back to the people that we had taken it from. And interestingly, all of us were fortunate. I'd say we were lucky in many ways to have opportunities that really appealed to each of us individually, waiting for us at the other end. So in that sense, I feel like I had a solid exit from my startup, my 20s.
First decade of your life.
My first real decade of professional life. So that was fun.
Right.
And that's what gets us to Hotstar, man. That's what the last 2 years have been about. It's about immense learning. It's about counting your blessings. And I recently turned 32 just 2 weeks ago. So that was another milestone crossed. Good year, good 2 years.
Wow.
Right. So what would you say at Hotstar? What's your day-to-day involved?
So I'm in the product team at Hotstar,
Right.
and among the various things that I try to provide oversight on, we've got at its core is Hotstar's growth strategy. So how we're acquiring more users, how we're retaining these users. The best way for us to do that is personalization, which deals with recommendations. Everything that keeps you loyal and sticky to the application, to the platform. It kind of, the mandate grows out into building for a marketing tech stack, much to the disappointment, but sometimes delight of Shiladitya. At Clever Tap, that was the reference. And so that's something that we build out. We also provide, we also build out the data platform as an application, because that's kind of the primitive, the fundamental component that kind of drives insights, that drives intelligence, that drives things that you can do which will give you 20% better, 10% better results. And you need to do a bunch of those things. There's no magic formula that makes you 3x, 4x better overnight.
Right.
It's a series of 10%, 20% lifts that you consistently perform.
I actually want to go deeper into that a little bit, because given that Hotstar has the unique advantage of being this sort of the leading volume of traffic in India, and one of those, probably one of the biggest apps in the country in terms of the number of users. You also see the most diverse set of user behaviors and a lot of randomness at scale. So how do you build a strategy? And how nuanced does it have to be, really, when you think about all of these things you just said: growth, retention, personalization? Because I'm sure other startups all have they have a basic formula they start with, right? Acquisition is one thing, spend money, get users. Then retention is based on, of course, what your domain is. But how diverse it is and complex. I know a little bit of this, but how complex is it really, given you guys are at the forefront of the scale story?
Yeah, I think being at where Hotstar is at has some inherent advantages. But it also requires you to keep innovating, because getting there may be like a certain level of effort, but staying there is equal, if not more effort.
And that's the stage you're at today. Like after the 3-4 years of IPLs, you guys have grown to a substantial mass of users. So how are you taking up this challenge now?
Yeah, I think you can actually break it down to the journey for anyone operating in consumer internet, right? Like the first set of things that you want to do is that you want to grow your audience. The next thing is you want to retain your audience, and then you want to monetize your audience, right? In reality, things aren't this linear and sequential.
Yeah.
In reality, you want to do all of these things at the same time.
Yes.
And it's just that the marginal focus that you might have on one versus the other could keep evolving or changing based on the needs of that time. But no one's waiting around for Hotstar to grow to 200 million first. Then let's retain the 200 million. Then let's monetize them in year 4. The reality is you got to do everything at the same time. So what's been really interesting is studying the factors that lead to any improvements, prioritizing which of these you'll be able to do when and whether you should do it or not. And I think that's a problem that never goes away. Understanding your constraints, predicting what the prioritization should be, And then, of course, superior execution is a mainstay that everyone needs to be at. But I think that's what Hotstar's challenge is. There are 20 important things to do, but your constraints are that you're limited on people. You can't scale up to like 2x your company size in just 1 year. And you obviously have 20 different things that you want to do. You want to grow your subscriber base. You want to grow your user base. You want to increase the frequency with which users come to the platform. You want users who are paying you to start paying you 2x the amount, right? You also want partners to give you bucket loads of cash to improve your cash flow situation at the start of the year. You want to do everything, but what do you really want to do? I think that's been an interesting set of trade-offs. As I've learned in the last 1 month especially, I think it's not about the list of items that you're doing. It's about the list of items that you're not doing, right?
Wow, that's interesting. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I think maybe there's 3 things that I'll do this quarter, right? And depending on how frequently we meet and talk, you'll probably internalize what those 3 things are super quick. What I'm not doing is 13 different things. And it's going to take you a lot more time to internalize that list, right? The way expectations get set in an organization like Hotstar, because so many different people chasing a common set of goals, or sometimes even diverse goals, is that it's important for you to keenly examine the opportunity cost at each point of time. Because that model keeps changing. It keeps evolving. It could be about whether there's a set of things that we want to do for IPL, right? It's very easy to say yes to everything. It's difficult to say no. But when you say yes to something new, it's important to think about what are all the things that I'd said no to a month ago, right? Like, Sheila, I could come to you with a request for your own platform, right? And not to raise customer requests via your own podcast, but but you know, we could essentially go down a route where we say that, hey, you know, guys, we want you guys to invest in like this WhatsApp capability or something, right? And everyone wants to do cool new things. That's why you got here, right? You got here so that when I build things, I basically talk about being the first to do it or the best to do it, right? Whatever. Either things could tickle your bones at different points of time. But I think what's important is to say that, hey, we told you that we're not fixing X, Y, and Z. Now that we're looking to do something new, let's revisit all the things that we said we won't do and take a careful look at whether it'll happen or not.
There's always like a list of things you reprioritized basically.
Yeah, like the Jira term for it is backlog, which is like the super uninspiring term.
Yes,
right? Like,
we all have one.
So
backlog is like a really negative term.
My to-do list has a to-do and want to do, right? I mean, like, you know, there's things you want to do, but you just no way to make time to do it.
And I want to ask another point of, like, you guys are also one of those, you're a content company, prima facie, let's say, but you're also a very big tech company. And all of these things which you're talking about, especially being in product, right, is also, there's limited tech bandwidth you can actually throw at it. And that's also been one of those resources you have to always optimize for. How has that been in the last 2 years of your experience here? Like,
so the framework with which I look at Hotstar is that Hotstar it's a distribution platform and a monetization platform for content creators. In this case, like the best content creators, of course, our parent company Star has been like a great studio to cater to. Disney, without a doubt, will be a great studio to cater to. There's been a bunch of others where we've gone out to different production houses. We worked on like a 50-50 model. We worked on an upfront model. We've done different things. But what we're basically doing, what the technology and what the product are basically doing, is that it is distributing content to the masses. And it's creating an effective means of monetizing this content. Both of these are in-house at Hotstar, right? Whether it's distributing IPL at 25 million scale, or whether it's monetizing IPL via ads or via subscribers, via the subscription engine that we've created. So that's what Hotstar's value add is in the entire ecosystem. Yes, it's super tech driven because that's where the new capabilities get unlocked. The business goals are obviously extremely audacious, and that's what's kept it fun for a very long time. And we're at an interesting point where we see our business goals evolve with the stage at which the company is at, the kind of calls that we've taken and why we've taken them at different points of time. How we're kind of fitting in well with the overall Disney story of direct to consumer. And it's interesting to see how we'll continue to meet these new challenges thrown at us, right? I mean, if you think back to IPL, it's everyone's aware of how much money was spent acquiring IPL. So everyone's also aware of how much money Facebook was willing to spend acquiring IPL.
Yeah.
So for the better or worse, that's the amount, that's the writing on the wall, right? It's about Facebook could have paid X. Will Hotstar make more than X with IPL?
Yeah.
Right? That's just one way to look at it, whether we've been successful at what we do or not. And that's always been a big reason to have big targets in place. You're competing with ad networks like Google and Facebook, right?
Yeah.
And that somewhat, like, people wouldn't be able to imagine that 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Fortunately, some people did. Looks like Hotstar is kind of there.
Right.
I wouldn't say it's a leader, but I think it's created like this cool niche for itself. And
I was actually
there.
hearing that, and the opinion again from folks who are in this space and are seeing how the story of the digital India has evolved in the last 5 or whatever years, right? So Jio, like we were saying earlier, may have been an enabler for it, right? It just enabled the network to expand and the user base to grow. But Hotstar probably has been one of those platforms which have seen the most adoption in our country and to abroad as well, because it's become the must-have sort of a app or platform which everyone has, which every phone has. And that's what you're capitalizing on. When you're saying you're comparable to a Facebook or a Google as a platform for running ads, that means you guys are more than just a streaming platform.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot to it. There's no denying that the Jio effect was a big contributor to the growth of consumer internet companies like Hotstar. Like we were discussing earlier, right? I mean, the Jio effect was something that existed for pretty much everyone in the country. But if I were to just think about it, like, Hotstar is probably one of the few growth stories that really, really capitalized on it well.
Right.
Obviously, everyone who does it subsequently, they're looking at a market that's already made for them. So in one sense, like, for example, TikTok's been doing so well from a user growth perspective, right, over the last 1 year. And all of these people, they already have this market to cater to. So that's an interesting time for us. And Hotstar's had to learn some hard lessons too, in terms of, you got IPL, you've paid a lot for it. There's a lot of users coming here. But with loyal IPL users also come the seasonal users who are never coming back to your platform again.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've got to figure out what you do to keep them, which is the whole acquire the users, retain the users, monetize the users. And similarly, it also comes with, there's this other, this one's more psychological, but essentially you have the risk of becoming a company that's running from IPL 1 to IPL 2 to IPL 3 to IPL 4, right? It's almost like everyone's going on vacation at the same time. Everyone's coming back at the same time and thinking about what we need to do for the next IPL.
Yeah.
Everyone's executing IPL together. It stifles innovation a little bit to not constantly be at the top of your game. So the challenge was, and what I feel proud of all our teams at Hotstar for, is that I think this will be the first IPL that feels really, really business as usual.
Nice.
I think we kind of got there last year, but this IPL, if we can hit that business as usual zone with IPL, that's when we know that we've made it in terms of a maturity as a product and technology company. So
nice.
Let's see how that goes.
Nice. So basically, you're saying I can call you during IPL and you'll pick up my phone and say, "Yeah, what's up?"
Yeah.
You're gonna be chilling.
that you can do. It kind of depends on whether I call you on day one or not.
no, definitely see the perspective there. I think as a ecosystem, everyone has sort of also matured. We could debate about the macroeconomic situation of the country and how that affects everyone's plans around IPL as well. But I think I also have a little more unique perspective that it's not just you guys who see IPL as this annual sort of event, right? It's everyone else in the industry. It's not just streaming, and there is a lot of streaming players. Beyond. I mean, I know you guys can't see them because you're so high up above the clouds, but there's also the food tech players. There's also like pretty much every consumer internet product.
Even us. I mean, our cricket shows were 3x audiences during IPL compared to what they are on the other times.
Correct. So it's an annual sort of growth event for every platform, right?
Hey, 100% with you on that, right? And this goes to the credit of the people who envisioned IPL as an annual Indian event, right? Like people are talking about, looks like elections might overlap with IPL. Like who talks like this?
I wonder, right? I mean, like the second year IPL had to go, right? Will it go again? I wonder if it does overlap. Would IPL have to move again? I wonder.
It happened last year, man. Nothing moved. IPL happened when it does.
Yeah, I know.
Election happened post IPL.
Yeah, no, but the second year, I think they had to move the IPL to South Africa, didn't they? Because of the elections, at least some part of it or something like that, right?
Yeah. It's just that I think the momentum has been such that IPL today is kind of a different beast.
Yeah.
By the way, the elections and IPL last year, they kind of did coincide.
Correct.
And eventually, clearly, no one thought much of it.
Yeah.
I guess my point was that there were people having this conversation. Right?
Exactly. The fact that
news channels were thinking about, election agar IPL finals ke साथ clash किया तो कौन देखेगा? TRP गिर जाएगा. Right? Like there are situations where, and think about it this way. India not making it to the finals of the One Day International World Cup was a financial loss for so many people.
Yeah.
Right? Like suddenly you've got 1/3 the viewership that you expected.
Yeah.
Think about all the marketing budgets and advertisement budgets that were deployed for this that suddenly had to be recalled. So
that's true.
I bet there was like basis points depreciation in our economy growth on that day when India didn't make it.
Wow.
So
no, that's sort of the thing, right? I mean, we can't help it. We are a cricket crazy nation. And we all have that, and every sort of consumer internet company is rallying around it. But I want your viewpoint on the fact that what is the sort of the next chapter for any Hotstar being Hotstar, Disney being Disney, coming in with this whole direct-to-consumer sort of strategy, and any other brand for that matter, right? We're seeing this global change in everyone wanting to be direct-to-consumer, like. My reference earlier about so many streaming players, like everyone is becoming both a content creator, distribution platform of their own. Is this really the future? Is this like we'll always be talking to brands directly? Every one of us, all of us?
I think brands talking to consumers directly has been a story that's been around, right?
Right.
It's even in the whole ads revolution, marketing revolution that happened across the 60s, the 70s, even before that, right? Brands talking to consumers directly has always been the challenge that marketing has been trying to solve for.
Correct.
And what you see today is a culmination of how companies associate value with themselves. So whether it's a Netflix that is a superior distribution platform and monetization platform, getting into building out its own content, where to the extent of 70 to 80% of Netflix's library is now originals, right? Produced by Netflix in some way or the other. Versus looking at Disney, that's traditionally the content creator and franchisor, looking to get into distribution and monetization directly, right? So a lot of consolidation horizontally that companies are looking to get into. I think this is inevitable. Because the point at which you're telling the best stories, you might as well be the one who's telling it to people, right? The point at which you're able to tell people stories really well because you can communicate with them, you might as well just go write some stories, right? The moat here is not, at least for now, does not seem like some crazy ass innovation. The moat here seems like what you got sitting in the bank, right? It seems like your capital power. It seems like your ability to maneuver different markets, understand different markets, penetrate different markets effectively with a global strategy. I think those seem to be moats, at least for the next 5 years. And with Disney, right, it's an interesting topic that we touched upon. In my view, looking at everything that I've read about Disney, like being at a 21st Century Fox company, when we were getting acquired by Disney, it obviously piques your curiosity, right? And you want to read everything about everything that's happened at Disney over the last 10 years, 15 years, and what's finally led them to making this massive acquisition and making Rupert Murdoch extremely rich. It's been interesting. I think it's a great bet to come from where you're at and say that direct to consumer is the way to go, and invest in technology that will keep you globally relevant in different markets. It's the right strategic call. It's a good 10-year, 15-year horizon. All the portfolio companies that Disney is now standing on top of are well positioned to try and do this for Disney. Whether it's Hotstar doing that in India, and Disney is curious to see if Hotstar can be deployed in multiple places. Whether it's Disney Plus that they launched in US quite successfully, might I add, and doing well over there. They're now pulling their content from Netflix, etc. Right, it's going to be available exclusively on Disney Plus. Figuring out how they want to use Hulu, ESPN Plus. I think these will all be interesting playouts over the next couple of years.
Wow! And what about similar things happening in brands in India as well? I mean, these are of course global brands. You guys are a global brand in that sense. Do you see a similar sort of story playing out with people who are running this massive conglomerates over here as well? I think Jio was one example we touched upon. Is how is that going to also change the way we as consumers interact with brands available with us?
I think you guys have the best insight on this and challenge me on this, right? The best way for brands to build relationships with consumers is content, right? That's primarily been the one way that they can do it. It's not their service. It's not their catalog of products. It's the quality of their content. And you've seen this play out in the past as well. Like, for example, with Flipkart getting into video now. Their intent is for more and more consumers to spend time with them. The consumer's understanding of their brand is going to be based on the kind of stories that they consume on Flipkart.
Zomato is doing video.
Zomato is doing video.
But I think Zomato's got a better... I like what Zomato's doing, right? Because I think Zomato's ideas are very coherent, right?
I actually want to challenge you on this because I, as a consumer, I'm just set in my understanding of these brands. I'm not going to go watch Zomato and Flipkart videos.
I agree with you. I don't think I don't think I'd go and watch Flipkart videos right now because I already got Netflix, I got Prime, I got Hotstar, I got God knows how many other things, right? So I don't know that I'm going to do Flipkart video, but Zomato, what it is the short form videos, which you watch after you order some food. Right. Really? So I feel like, Zomato kind of works somewhat in what they're doing. I'm a little more skeptical about some of the other things, right? I do think that this idea that all brands should build content, right? Or all brands are communicating through content, right? I would push back against that to an extent as well. Because I feel like even though some try to do it, and it's like, it's part of the orthodoxy of thinking these days, right? It still feels to me like the audiences who, like, we do branded content, right? We make content for a bunch of brands and stuff like that. And we do well in some ways, right? But it is dwarfed in terms of in terms of what kind of exposure we get when it comes to creating content which is created without a brand imperative behind it, right? So, and maybe the answer to that we need to make better branded content, but I do feel like that is something that we do see, right? That shows which are not brand led have better numbers from our side.
No, I mean, look, that's completely fair. One of the things that most brands and most companies, even consumer internet companies, have been learning to do effectively well, they've been training themselves to do it effectively well, is their presence on social media. Right? It's been a differentiator for them. Social media has evolved to a point where, we were talking about this earlier, organic reach, there's no such thing as organic reach anymore. So when they know that they're able to create differentiators by having a voice on social media, what they see is an opportunity to build that same conversation or community on their own platforms. I think brands wanting to build community and induce conversation about themselves, that's the holy grail, no?
Correct.
For any CMO at any of these
Correct.
companies.
So I would differentiate between the idea of communicate and content, right? So most social media stuff, like you look at Zomato or you look at Google or you look at all of these guys who do like amazing things on social media, they're communicating, right? In some way, they're talking about what their brand is doing. They're talking about the brand ethos,
values, and
there's no there's no confusion around what the conversations are, right? When we talk about a content platform and that being the thing that brands are looking to kind of create for themselves, I feel like, you're at Hotstar, you know how expensive it is to acquire customers onto platforms, right? And I mean, like how competitive it is to keep customers on platforms and stuff like that. I don't know if that's, and I could be completely wrong about this, but that feels a little more tenuous to me.
The way a lot of these companies would want to think about it is that unless they're in the business of content, they probably have some kind of a sticky proposition already.
Right.
Yeah.
And that sticky proposition is what guarantees repeat rate. And whether it's a content strategy or whether it's any alternative engagement strategy, that's basically looking to increase time spent.
Okay.
Yes.
Right? So this is typically
What's
how
the benefit
they'd want
of
to.
that? Because I've heard this argument before about increasing time spent on
Show ads.
No, but on a transactional app, right? An app like Zomato. What is the benefit? Since we brought up Zomato earlier, right? What is the benefit for increasing your time on app beyond the transaction that's been conducted? I don't know the answer to this.
Sure. So time spent typically, at least while I'm thinking about it, typically has two benefits. One is that usually monetization, especially if you have an advertisement-led monetization strategy, is linearly proportional to time spent in app.
Yeah.
That's one. The second is, and this is an interesting piece, time spent in your app is helping do two things. Building more loyalty with your platform, ensuring that time spent is not spent on your competitor.
Okay.
So that's kind of valuable.
All right.
So every minute in a month that I spent thinking about food, that's the total addressable market that Zomato has.
Yeah.
And
And their
what
market share is defined as the number of minutes that they've grabbed from me. All the
Share,
time that I
like
spent
how you say
thinking about
share
food.
of wallet, it's share of time.
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah, no, I get that. I understand that, right? But I feel, again, I'm not talking about a app which is a content app, right? For Hotstar, time on app is important. For Netflix, time on app is important. For Savan, time on app is important. For Ghana, time on app is important, right? For a transactional app, right? For an app which I go to do something, and once I'm done with it, I'm out of there.
But that's exactly what those apps don't want to be. Like even the Amazons of the world could argue saying that we're purely transactional, but they love it when people just browse and browse.
Sure.
And
I guess it's kind of easy to break it down. No? I agree with you, especially if you're transaction oriented. Your top KPI will be number of successful transactions per visit or number of successful transactions per week per user. Right?
yeah,
We could clearly make a top KPI out of that. But what I could chase in addition is that post transaction, I'd love for the customer to browse through. Customers also brought this.
yeah.
Okay.
Right? Customers also viewed this.
Upsell, cross-sell.
Since you bought this cool headphone that you're wearing right now, maybe you'd like to
do this. Yeah, okay.
buy it as a gift for a friend of yours. Or do you know these 5 other friends bought it or they're looking for recommendations about it? Would you like to write a review?
Sure.
Would you like to tell them how it is? That's what keeps you on,
Right.
It's creating a strategic differentiator in the market for yourself.
No,
Yeah, okay.
that's the consumer internet story. It's get you hooked, keep you on, and keep selling you something or the other. And I mean, either show you ads and not sell anything, or sell you something as a
if
transaction.
you're an ad platform, absolutely, right? I understand why any kind of platform which has
It works
a lot
for
of
transaction guys as well.
Amazon came out with this interesting stat. This is a bit old, so maybe I'm sure it's updated by now. But it basically said that on average, every customer on Amazon had 14 touch points to buy a product before they finally did. So that was their magic number.
Okay.
Right? And these 14 touch points were across Facebook, following the cookie ads on Google, on Amazon itself via different mechanisms, maybe a notification, maybe an email. So they were tracking multiple channels, and they'd come up with this magic number of 14, at which point a user typically ended up buying a product.
Yeah.
So for them, that post-transaction journey that we were talking about, time spent in app that we were talking about, creates a immensely valuable opportunity for on-platform marketing, which helps you incent more and more transactions repeatedly. So I think it's a real estate game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I
That's
get
what it is.
I get the theory. I get the argument behind it. Right? I'm not sure if it sounds 100%.
Hey, don't you want more people spending time on the IVM podcast side?
I do want people, but then again, I'm an ad-driven platform, right? So for me, time spent on app is directly proportional to revenue generated, right?
What if you were a subscription-driven application?
If I
Would you
was-
then care about time spent
I
in app?
would, because I think that there is only so much amount of time that people are going to spend listening to audio content. I want to own as much of that time as possible. I don't disagree for anything which is attention driven, right? Where the app's end goal is to generate attention. There I agree with you 100%, right? I'm a little skeptical about transactional platforms who are getting into the content space.
I
I'm seeing
have an
this.
opinion about this, which is very India specific also. I think India has an audience which just has a lot of time. More than the usual first world audience, where transactional platforms are for transactions.
Right.
And sticky and user experience and following up, like Amazon or Uber or whatever else
Right.
you use. So in India, because there is just this land grab for time, and there's a lot of time to go around. Like people, a large part of, and Shobhit can talk about how the audience is distributed in terms of time spent on app. Even in tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, people have more time.
Yeah.
So
I guess, yeah.
just make them be on your app.
I guess.
Traditionally, pre-internet penetration, the kind that we've seen, entertainment has been costly in our country.
It has.
It's not been a cheap thing. I mean, sure, we may have had like these 1 or 2 free-to-air DD channels. There might be a bucket of free-to-air channels, but there's a cost associated with
Yes.
it. That television set is expensive. Getting that connection is a hassle, right? Entertainment that you actually care about is paid. Users don't like to pay.
Yeah.
What the internet has done is that it's suddenly brought like a bucket load of great entertainment at your doorstep,
Yeah.
ready for you to consume
Which is free.
whenever you want, without the shame of your family members looking at what you're looking at,
Right.
right? So why do you think TikTok is big? So this is happening, right? People are going to spend their time on it. We were discussing earlier about crazy commute times. It's a reality for most of your urban population, no matter how well off they are or where they live. So this is what people are going to do. They're going to entertain themselves.
Yeah.
This is their free entertainment destination. So it's a good place to be for people. Think about what Nike is doing. This is actually something that I've been trying to follow for a good period of time, because I do have like this side interest in behavioral science and how do you affect behavioral change. And what Nike's been trying to do is that it has been effectively using its content, its strategy to induce behavior, right? They're trying to incentivize fitness, physical fitness. Their products carry the brand and the messaging of physical fitness. Their content, the way they're building interactive experiences with their wearables, they're trying to induce competition elements between friends, right? It's all geared globally to try and increase the adoption of its products.
Yeah.
Of course, while achieving a goal which I can fully back, which is making our population more healthy, which is great. But that's really the power of a great content strategy, right? And it is content at the end of the day.
True.
Yeah.
True. Well, I took us down a rabbit hole. I'm sorry for doing that.
But no, this is great. This is turns all the way around to how you started your career doing debate. So I think this is exactly what podcasting shows are about. It's nice, focused debate. So
Yeah.
I don't know how listening to your own voice after all these years sounds.
Yeah, I mean, it's super interesting. I don't know if we were recording then, but during debate, and in order to try and get better at debate, we didn't really have many mentors around us as we started doing more of it, and we got a bit known in the circuit. We got introduced to a lot of great people who helped us out. But the best way for us to learn was just to record ourselves doing it. like at a competition or something. And so that was an interesting piece. It made you correct yourselves in ways that you otherwise would not.
Right.
Get rid of habits that you've accumulated over 20 years, right? So that was an interesting one.
Yeah, I think then back to my original point, it's very different from what armchair debates we all have from on Twitter or any other such social platform where you can just thumb out a few things and get away
Our thumbs are the most vociferous parts of our bodies.
Absolutely.
Cool. Awesome, guys. Just a reminder, if you'd like to follow us on Slack, go to ivmpodcast.com/Shunya1. There's a link over there for joining the Slack channel. Send us a request for the invitation and we'll send you an invite back. And also remember, do give us a review. iTunes reviews help, or anywhere else that you're listening to the podcast. Just give us a review. That would be helpful.
Yes. And Shobhit, where can people reach you if they want to say a shout out to you or debate with you on some of the controversial things you may have said?
Yes, they can. This could actually have been an interesting discussion topic if we thought about it earlier. But I'm kind of not on social media. Not on Twitter. I'm not on Instagram. I have a Facebook account which I use once a year, which is to thank lovely people for wishing me on my birthday. And I don't know if people think it's rude, but like it comes from a genuine place. I usually do like one consolidated message, giving people like the snippet of what's happened in my year.
Wow!
And what I'm really looking forward to.
Okay.
And
so
just
it's a
like
blog.
Yeah, it's a tweet.
It's like a politician coming on at the window and saying, "Hey, I'm great. Thank you.
Yeah,
I have nothing to say. I'm going back in."
Except this year, I did have something to say. I think it was one of those moments where, again, introspecting over the decade, and I think what I was trying to get through to people about was that if it's one thing that I've learned, especially that roller coaster, unpredictable journey I was talking about earlier, it's the importance of physical and mental health. I don't think I can stress this enough. I think trying to focus on my health, I don't think I reached the place I want to be, but just trying to focus on it has been immensely valuable in keeping me sane. Staying sane has been immensely valuable in keeping me motivated to remain physically fit, right? It feeds into itself, this whole thing. So that's been super helpful for me. And I think this time around what I wanted to tell people was that, cool, like did a bunch of things, but if there's any way at all that I can help people using my network or my experience or my self-proclaimed general smarts, I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to try and help out. And I'm reachable at my email address, singhal.shobhit@gmail.com. I've been decent since the inception of Gmail. And I'm kind of reachable on LinkedIn as well. So Shobhit Singhal Hotstar typically ends up.
Sure. And
bring
like
my profile up.
And otherwise, we have a Slack channel. You can join that in case people want to drop you a quick message somewhere. But it was great having you, man. Thank you so much
guys,
for
thanks for doing this. This was a lovely experience. I'd love to maybe participate again for some future endeavor. And let's figure it out.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thanks everyone for listening in. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, guys.
I hope you enjoyed that show. We'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Intel, Storytel, and Cambly. And let me tell you a couple of things that you should check out this week. On the Pragati podcast this week, journalist Rohini Mohan joins Pawan to discuss Assam's unique history, how the NRC was rolled out in Assam, and what a nationwide NRC might look like. On IVM Likes, Antariksh, Abbas, Ritika talk about their pop culture resolutions for this new year. On Ganatantra, Saryu and Alok are joined by Dr. M.K. Raghavendra to explore how the politics in Indian cinema gets influenced by politics itself. On KBCD, Farhad and Sunetro talk about kinds of addiction and the ways they have overcome some of these in their personal lives. On Tapri Tales, Madhuri talks about the state of our mental health in the midst of political and environmental crises that are surrounding us through her story, A Day of Anxiety. On States of Anarchy, Hamsuni looks at 7 major global affairs stories from 2019 and looks at the way forward in 2020. Thanks and keep listening.
Filter coffee is a fascinating beverage. You need to pick the right beans, blend them in the right proportion, roast them to perfection, and slow brew at the right temperature to get the perfect cup. Which is exactly like great conversations as well. You need to track down the most interesting minds, get them into their zone, and settle down for an unhurried, unscripted chat. And coffee for me is always, always, always best enjoyed with friends. I'm Karthik Nagarajan, and do share my table as I meet some of the most interesting people I know and sit them down for a strong cup of coffee and an even stronger conversation. Join me every Wednesday for a freshly brewed episode. This is not frappe. This is the Filter Coffee Podcast.